The extreme response and reactions by persons around the world, but specifically in the US, has gotten out of control. And you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the persons who may be in a fast food line on a Friday night, is extremely busy, and instead of waiting patiently in the car for their turn to order at the window, they proceed to wail on their horn, and the person in front of them proceeds to respond. And before we all know it, there are two customers literally having a physical altercation in the fast food drive-through. This is the same people who, when they go inside a restaurant, if they are not seated together within a certain amount of time for their party of 20 or more without a reservation, they proceed to attack and assault the person who is managing the front of the house. These are extreme situations that shouldn't be, but for one reason or another, they are becoming far too common. Now, in my opinion, I believe it stems from one thing. Well, primarily one thing, and that's emotional intelligence, or should I say, the lack of. Hello and welcome to Ladies Listen Up. I am your host, Gwendolyn G.R. Houston Jack. And I got to tell you, nothing gets my blood boiling than hearing about these situations because they just don't make sense. Now, I don't know when it actually started. According to some reports, they do believe a good chunk of this behavior, this pent up anger, started in 2020 when the world was impacted by a pandemic. Now, let's revisit that really quick because none of us ever thought that we would be part of a pandemic. We are talking about a worldwide virus that was killing a number of people and making a number of us ill and caused every single person to change or adjust the way they live. Now, I'm not going to talk about any conspiracy theorists. I don't have time for that. But I do know that we all felt the emotional impact, the physical impact, the mental impact, and the financial impact. Changed our world. For some of us, it began a new chapter of how we wanted to live moving forward. And for others, well, it was back to status quo. But what hasn't become status quo is how a number of US citizens are responding to minor everyday interactions. Now, I want to say this really quick because I've been the person who has worked in retail, absolutely loved it. And the one thing we always taught our team is that the people who came into our store, our guests, they weren't allowed to speak to us in derogatory manners, sexist remarks, racist remarks, just things that make you feel uncomfortable. They weren't allowed to do it. Whether they were face-to-face, online, or calling over our phone. We did not allow that behavior. And I'm going to say allow because you can, of course, block someone from stepping on your property. So when I see some of these reports of customers throwing food at people, knocking over displays, grabbing through the window, it's so ridiculous. I will tell you that if there was ever a time where somebody stepped in my face and yelled, um, I learned early how to lower my voice so that the person would have to bring themselves down. Because I think we all know that there was a point in time in retail or a restaurant, any service industry place, where if you proceeded to loud talk someone and cause a scene, it would cause the management to do whatever they could do to get you out and make you happy. And then that shifted. At least where I worked, it was never the case. You could loud talk all you want to. No one's going to, will just look at you like you're crazy. It's an adult temper tantrum. But now it's gotten to the point where it is assault. Assault. I recall vividly a story I read about a family going to a Cheddar's restaurant. I want to say it was a party of 6 or 8. And because they didn't have a reservation, and it's a Saturday night, and it's busy, they were not seated together. And they proceeded to beat this 17-year-old child. 17. He had been at Cheddar's for a month to earn money for his senior year. 17. Now, I want you to really think about it. Because if you're from my age group, we're talking the 70s baby, the 60s baby. I can't even think of a time where we even had the thought of behaving that way in public, or as they say, the gumption to attack another person without any fear of the consequences. It's assault. Assault equals jail time. And that young man, yeah, I would sue them for everything they own. I would make sure that my senior year was paid for and a little bit of college or whatever he wanted to do was paid for. Where do we get the idea that putting our hands on other people and destroying someone else's property is the way to respond when we are disappointed? Now, I didn't get the ages of all of these stories I have read about, and you don't have to go far. You and I both know that you can tune into TikTok or Instagram, Facebook or YouTube, and you can see these people behaving badly. And you say to yourself, what would I do? Or maybe that's just me, because I've been in the service industry, right? And I do know, I know myself extremely well that as I have shared before on another social media platform, that when a customer was really getting out of pocket, I put myself right in their face. I will tell you now, yes, I was written up for that decision, but in the moment, it made sense. Never touched her, but yeah, we clearly did not follow company policy. Let me just say that. So let me go to that, right? Because we can't control what happens around us. When we leave out of our doors every single day, we are not guaranteed to return home. We want to. We hope that we do. We tell our loved ones, hey, I'll see you later, with the idea that we will. But the truth is, we don't control what happens outside our window. The only thing we can control is how we respond and react to what is happening outside our window. So that brings me to a conversation about emotional intelligence. And I have to tell you, I really believe in all my bones, that what we're seeing right now is a huge lack of emotional intelligence. Huge. I'm going to say emotional intelligence first, and then I'm going to add in we have been desensitized by some things that we see everything as entertainment. Now, that may be, it may really speak to a certain segment of our population because of age, but I'm going to leave that one for later. Let's talk about emotional intelligence really quick. When I became a sales trainer and had to start traveling for the company I worked for at that time, I picked up a book about emotional intelligence. Now, we love to promote geniuses. They're good in math, they're great in science, they're great in reading, they have the arts. But there are so many geniuses that go unnoticed. And with that, we put a lot of emphasis on our IQ, right? The intelligence, book smart, but no common sense. Your emotional intelligence really speaks to how you respond to what's going on around you. It looks at your self-awareness or lack thereof. It also has a place where you hold yourself accountable for your behaviors. It's huge. I mean, major, major. So I figured if I'm going to start working with other people as a coach, as a trainer, I need to understand, what does Gwendolyn do? How do I react and respond to various situations? Do I fully understand disappointment for myself? Not that my perspective on it makes a difference for Bobby, but it can. Knowing how to control these emotions when things are going out of pocket makes all the difference, especially as a trainer, a coach, or an educator. It's all about communication, how we communicate, not just being heard, but hearing the other person as well. So we started the journey years ago. If I have to put it down into, I'm going to say 2005. 2005. And as we have grown into our career and into ourselves, that emotional intelligence, oh man, it gets sharper and sharper. Oh, now, if you've never looked at anything regarding your EQ, this is going to be your challenge, because now we want to know, what's your EQ? There is I guess you'd call him a motivational speaker. Well, he's not really motivational. He's really more like for teams, but I'm going to say motivational just to make it easy for us to understand. His name is Adam Smith. God, he is amazing. He's an ex-Green Beret, big buff guy, but he's got some wisdom, especially for teams. And he shared this quote where he said, "Facts are not feelings, and feelings are not facts." Now, I know that sometimes we get into our feelings. We'll be in a moment and we are in our head and we're like, we go from 0 to 60. I know this person did this. I know they saw me there. I think they did it on purpose. Let me give you a prime example, because I've done it myself, but this is where the EQ comes in. I was in a store shopping. There is an elderly woman. She's older than me. I'm going to probably say maybe 60, 70. And she's managing the registers. Now, there is a lady on this one side, and then there's a lady on the opposite side, because they have two sides. So she helps the lady on the other side. Great. And I'm over here waiting for her because somebody was just there. I pulled up and, she never turns around. She proceeds to go about her business. As a matter of fact, she left the register. And I thought to myself, I know this lady saw me. I know this lady heard me. When she turned to walk back, she noticed me and said, "Oh my goodness, I'll check you out." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, great." Now, in my head, I'm thinking, I know this woman just saw me here. I know she did. And then I noticed her hearing aid on the side where I was. Now, if you don't have any loved ones who have hearing aids, I'm going to give you a little tip. Even with the aid, sometimes you still can't hear, right? Maybe turn down a little low. So when I stood there and I knew 100% this woman was ignoring me, turns out she couldn't even hear me. Assuming the right of other people takes a lot of power, a lot of courage to say, let me stop for a second. Let me just wait. What else could be true? Now, my feelings about the situation, yeah, they were way off. They were way off. The fact was, yes, she walked away from the register. But the idea that she ignored me, that was an assumption. No offense, I don't think she really could hear because even though I'm now in front of her, she could hear me. But we are so quick to believe the worst of each other or get in our feelings that we start going 0 to 60 in our head. None of that is even possibly true. But as far as we're concerned, it happened. And I know they did it on purpose. And now I'm going to retaliate. Versus assuming the right of all parties. What else could be true? What else? Now, I am not saying that when you're not feeling something funny, that you shouldn't trust your gut. I'm not saying that because I have been in places where people have been on the same aisle but never spoke, but then kind of like tracked me. And I was never in loss prevention officially, but I've done my fair share of tailing people in retail stores. And yes, I actually caught them, sure did. So I know when you're keeping an eye on somebody, but not keeping an eye on somebody, like we get that. I mean, and it's New York City Trust. It happens a lot. A lot. So I know that that happens. So this is not to say do not trust your gut, but it is to say before we take that as the end all be all, can we confirm that the facts are what they are, right? Because feelings are not facts, and facts are not feelings. They are different. A lot of us will feel some kind of way. I feel like you made me. I feel as if you, well, those are your feelings, but the fact of the matter is that was not the case. And we have to separate them. Studying emotional intelligence allows you to really sit back, put things on a back burner, and look at a situation from a different lens. Sometimes we're too close to what's happening in the moment. Here's another example. I remember being told to never leave a voicemail after an event happened and you're still charged up. I did it though. I played it back. And when I played it back, I was more than surprised how angry it came across. Like it was clear that I was angry. And I thought, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and delete that because it's not gonna come across well. 4 times I had to delete it before I got it right. And then I told myself, you know what, Gwendolyn, in the future, when you're feeling some kind of way, stop. It doesn't have to be done in that moment. Give yourself some time to come off 10 and then really think about what happened. And maybe it's not as pressing or as awful as you thought. You know how things happen with like our loved ones? It could be something very simple, like my husband ordering a basic hot dog with nothing on it. Not mayo, not mustard, not relish, meat and bread. I was hot. But I thought to myself, okay, if you put these words out here about this ridiculous hot dog, where's it gonna go? Like, is it really that serious? Do you really want to have a discussion that could become an argument over a hot dog? A lot of times, be it our loved ones, especially our loved ones, we're so charged up in the moment that we can't see or think straight. And it's only when you step back and you say to yourself, what else could be true? What else? Maybe what's happening is what I think is happening. Prime example, you're meeting somebody and they're late. And you're like, golly. Now, the last time we did something, they lied about this, they stood me up, they blah, blah, blah. So I gave them one more time, and this is why I don't bother. And then you start thinking, well, what else could be true? Maybe they left their cell phone. Maybe they're in a car accident. Maybe they witnessed a car accident. Maybe there's all these things that could be true. And people say, well, they could have called, they could have texted. Maybe they're not at a place where they can call and text. We got to stop and ask ourselves, what else is happening before we go 0 to 60? Now, let me just stop real quick and talk about that second part about a certain portion of our society. And I believe it's about the generation that we are desensitized and we see everything as entertainment. And we really haven't had a chance to put our arms around disappointment. 2020 was a year of grief and loss opportunities. I mean, I'm a photographer and I could not get outside to photograph anyone. That's huge. I lost loved ones to COVID. There were all these other opportunities that were sitting in front of me and they just vanished. That's a lot of loss. It's a lot of disappointment. And if you check the reports, there were numbers of children, adults who didn't know how to process all of these emotions. They were beside themselves. Some of us sought out therapy, a counselor, have a therapist. Some of us act as if it was no big deal. We'll just get past it. We won't worry about doing anything because everything is fine right now. Fact of the matter is, though, it is clear that we are bringing in a lot of baggage from the past into our future. The fact that there are so many people who just explode when something very small happens. Yeah, there's a lot of anger, a lot of grief, and a lot of work to be done. Now, I've said this 1,000 times. I'm going to keep saying it. You need a therapist, you need a counselor, get you a counselor. There's nothing wrong with that. If you're not ready to find someone immediately to hold your hand through this process, we do have another option for you to help you get started. right. One of my favorite websites is 6 Seconds, right? They are an organization focused on growing the world's emotional intelligence. Beautiful thing. I actually started it with my training team because, again, as a trainer, as a coach, we are working with people on a variety of issues, and being able to know how to communicate with them and identify things as well as in ourselves helps grow that relationship. So I had my team do some of the exercises that they offer. What's really cool about 6 Seconds is that they have events, they have a blog, they have free tests, but they have courses you can take to help grow you and your team's emotional intelligence. It's a beautiful thing, which I love. It's a beautiful thing. So let me show you some things when it comes to this website. They say we've got people problems. Most of the world's challenges aren't due to a lack of data or technical skills. They're emotional and relational. Stress and complexity are on the rise, and well-being and employee engagement are falling. It's time for more people skills. That it is. This is when we brought EI into our organization. One of the things you can do if you decide to go with 6 Seconds, and it's 6seconds.org, is that you can start with one of their tests, do an assessment, and see where you fall. And you might be surprised. You may be pleasantly surprised where you fall. It's so interesting how we take these tests and all the little things come up. I remember taking one clearly years ago, and one of the issues I was dealing with was a fear of success, not a fear of failure. People are like, oh my God, I'm afraid. No, 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 no. I find success far more scary than failing. Failing is a learning opportunity. You fall down, you get back up, you figure it out. But what if you're so successful you can't meet other people's expectations? You can barely meet your own. I know. It's in there. The cool thing, though, is you can sign up for their newsletter and get plenty of information about emotional intelligence. And then you can also, if you have the time, you can join one of their mini webinars. They do plenty of events all the time. So I highly suggest that you look at 6seconds.org, and it is, just to make sure I get it right, because sometimes I forget, it is www.6seconds.org. Emotional intelligence makes the biggest difference. It speaks to how you relate to other people. It speaks to how you communicate, but it can make all the difference in your relationships, not only with your colleagues, but with your loved ones and with yourself. It is about self-awareness and self-accountability. How do you handle all of what's going on outside your window? How do you handle disappointments? How do you handle grief? This is life, y'all. This is life. And I don't know about you, but it doesn't seem to be getting any easier as we go along the road. I will tell you this, though. When you start the journey, you may find yourself becoming, I don't want to say addicted, but you'll find yourself sharing what you've learned and what you've discovered with those who are close to you. And if they are somewhat similar to you, because your tribe is your vibe, then maybe you all can take that journey together. So, as we like to say, give yourself the space and grace to grow and learn.